Hello, this is Tiba.
This is Amir. This is Youth Party Scholar Radio TV KEXU 96.1.
And so, you know how recently we've been talking about climate change and how it's affecting the earth and how we youth are planning on stopping it. One of the main concerns that we've been having about climate change in this era and this time is something called permafrost. And I'd like to give it up to Teacher Jasmine to explain more about that. But first, Amir, can you introduce who Teacher Jasmine is?
Teacher Jasmine is a biology teacher at the Skolaz Academy.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about permafrost today. Permafrost is soil and ice and dirt that has been frozen for more than 2 years, and it's frozen solid. Much of the permafrost on Earth has actually been frozen for thousands of years, if not millions of years. But permafrost can be anything that has been frozen for more than 2 years. So the ground and the ice that might be sitting on top of the ground. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the risk that permafrost or the melting of it will have to the earth?
Well, permafrost doesn't just store ice and soil and dirt. It also has lots of microbes inside of it. So microbes are like bacteria that live in there, and they produce special gases. These little gases, sometimes are greenhouse gases like methane, are stored underneath so that they can't be released into the atmosphere. With climate change, since the world is getting warmer and warmer every year, and it's getting higher and higher in elevation and how warm it's getting, these permafrost stores are melting and disappearing, and that methane gas is spewing out. The problem is that methane is much more potent as a greenhouse gas than all of the other greenhouse gases because it turns into carbon dioxide. Methane on its own can store heat like the fibers of a sweater, and then after about 200 years of being exactly what it is up in the atmosphere, it can turn into carbon dioxide, which remains carbon dioxide, which also stores heat for another 250 years. So that means that we have a warming effect that gets more and more intense with the methane that's released for 450 years, about 500 years. So it's a major problem when this permafrost starts to melt and the methane spews out. Scientists are going up to Arctic regions and down to Arctic regions and looking at methane that's released from permafrost. You can even light a flame over the methane and it'll burst into flames out of the ice because this methane is so pressurized and built up. And it's built naturally by these little microbes that are inside of the permafrost. They're not supposed to come out. It's supposed to just build up under there and stay frozen. But it's a very, very dangerous situation for climate change, and it makes things a lot worse than all of the human causes and human interactions that we have with, technology that produce our own greenhouse gases. This is a natural situation that's become a little bit of a disaster.
See, so the thing is that the reason why this has been happening, one of the main reasons, is because of human pollution. Mm-hmm. It's because, the human pollution that's been putting out, the greenhouse gases, like you said, are melting the permafrost. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that humans have started this, but we can also end it. So I want to talk about a couple of innovation projects that us at the Skolaz Academy have been trying to work out to help this earth and in the long run, and not just try to make money now and eventually destroy the earth. Okay. So I wanted to have Amir introduce about one of his innovation projects, about a solar-powered go-kart. That's what I heard.
Okay. I'm building a go-kart that runs on sun because I don't want to use the oil, because the oil comes from the earth, and the oil is polluting the air, and that's why I got a solar go-kart.
See, that's interesting. Another thing I wanted to bring up about my innovation project is I'm creating an air cooling system that is also run on solar power, because we're trying to make everything solar powered, because another thing about the kind of downgraded, like the kind of downward spiral of the earth, is that another thing is that the sun is becoming more powerful because the atmosphere is thinning. So if we could use that to our benefit, and now we have more battery from the sun, therefore our things would be more powerful. So another thing that I want to talk about is my cooling system. So what it is that it uses solar energy to cool the air, basically like an air conditioner that is run on solar power. So I have a question. Do you actually have any ideas for innovation projects?
Well, what I think is really interesting is the use of methane for our technology. So a lot of vehicles are now being run off of methane itself. It's not that the vehicles are producing methane, which is what most vehicles do, produce carbon dioxide, methane, other chemicals that go into the atmosphere. There's a lot of city buses that use methane gas to produce electricity, and the products are not perfect. It still releases pollution back up into the atmosphere. It still releases some greenhouse gases back into the atmosphere, but it actually consumes a lot of it, so it slows it down a lot. I think it would be really interesting if we were able to develop some sort of technology that could be physically placed over these methane vents that are produced from melted permafrost that harness that methane and use it to produce electricity, maybe for research, maybe for some sort of ecological purpose. So there's a lot of technology that's being developed that can help animals maybe cross certain, areas that are melting, or help the ecosystem, the environment, all of the organisms involved keep doing what they were doing before we started messing with them. So I think it would be really interesting if we started to develop more methane based electrical generation. However, I think the best thing for us to do is slow down what we're doing, slow down how we're doing what we're doing as a species, and think about how we can develop technologies that do not use any gases or produce any gases. That's going to be really complicated, but what we do know is that we have to slow down what we're doing. We also know that things will get worse. But the hope is that since we are the ones who created the problem, since we are the ones who created this technology that produces all of these greenhouse gases and pollutants into the atmosphere, we are the ones that possess the intelligence and the innovation to come up with something like a solution. So thinking of something like, maybe using go-karts or recreational vehicles that are solar powered, or coming up with an air cooling system, something that could be used on a massive scale. Even on a theoretical level, that is still very, very positive and in the right direction. But yeah, I think if I was going to develop something, it would have to be methane using, it would have to use up some of the methane that is being produced, or released rather, in the permafrost. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Is there any final words that you wanted to say, just to the audience?
Well, you have to keep asking questions. Everybody is entitled to ask questions about what they don't understand. That is the first step to moving forward. And science is for anybody who wants to do it. Scientists are everywhere. Everybody has the ability to be a scientist. Everybody has the ability to think of those interesting and difficult questions that maybe no other people don't want to ask or are too afraid to ask. And we don't have innovation like what you're coming up with, and we don't ask those important questions unless we're bold enough to talk about it with each other. So making sure that when you hear about something in the news that is interesting, or maybe you're really worried about it, discuss it with other people. Think about it. Maybe do a little bit of research just for yourself, but also for the benefit of everyone else around you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And remember, guys, this is Jasmine Hain, biologist teacher at Skolaz Academy. Thank you so much. This is 96.1 KEXU, Youth Poverty Scholars Radio. We're out.
We out.